I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
The more you talk, the harder I want to hit you.
I'm happy because of being here today. Fuck you.
Come on, you want me to drive? No. You're supposed to be suicidal, remember? I'll
Anybody
drive.
a drive?
Let's get in the car.
Fucking shit. Fuck me in the fucking ass. Fuck you, you fucking stupid cunt.
Like they always say, sometimes every franchise has to have one bad film. Okay, before I start this isn't a 100% rant, because while it's a bad movie, I wouldn't necessarily call it like mega epic rant worthy. Because, there were some fine things it did, but then it goes downhill. Whenever it tries to do stuff that's decent, they fuck it up. It's one of those films, so it's somewhat-ish more normal review, but it's still a bad film. And it's sad because this is the 5th entry in the Rocky series, and there is a bad Rocky film. And we're reviewing the bad Rocky film. I wish we could be reviewing this, the real finale, instead, but nah, we can't just skip a review. We can't skip a certain movie. We gotta do, when we do a review series, we gotta do all the movies, even the bad ones. So, this is gonna be for 1990's Rocky V, which, the saddest thing is, this is directed by the guy who did the original movie. Came back for this one. So what the fuck happened? What happened to the whole major step down from all the first 4 movies? Well, let's get on with the plot. So, this takes place right after Rocky IV, and Rocky's forced to retire after permanent damage inflicted on him in the ring by Ivan Drago. So he returns home after the Drago bout, and Balboa discovers that the fortune he had been acquired as heavyweight champ got stolen, lost on the stock market by his accountant. Is his accountant that much of an idiot? With fucking money. His boxing days are over, and so he coaches an up-and-coming fighter named Tommy Gunn that no one gives a shit about. Rocky can't compete with the high salaries and glittering prizes being offered to Gunn by other managers in town. Has my reaction. What I can say, at the very least, this is the only bad movie in the series. It's somewhat still a rant, but it's not like crazy of a rant as some were probably hoping. Because, well, let's face it. Like I said, this film does some stuff that could have had potential, but they ruin it. And thankfully, 15 years later, we would get a proper Rocky V. So at least this did get retconned in 2006. So I can still somewhat call it a normal-ish review, maybe. Maybe. But it's still a negative review. How was this film made? So, this development for this film began literally 4 years after Rocky V in 1989. If this was, honestly, they should have began development of this a little bit earlier if they wanted to set this after Rocky IV. Stallone, who had wanted to end the series, completed the screenplay, but did not direct this one. The director of the first film returned for this one, and then shooting began in January 1990. And largely filmed on location around Philadelphia. The filmmakers then got differences with United Artists and were unable to include darker elements from Stallone's original screenplay. That's one of the things that happened. Stallone had a screenplay originally planned, but MGM and UA were difficult to work with. They fucked it up. Basically, they fucked up what obviously was a much different version probably planned. After the film was shot and completed, it got released in the United States on the same day as Home Alone, on November 16th, 1990. It's got bad reviews from critics. The screenplay, characterization, continuity errors, inaccuracies, medical inaccuracies, and 15 years before Balboa got made, this was deemed an awful way to wrap up the series. It was somewhat successful, but it made less money than any of the other films. It only made $120 million worldwide on an either $30 or $42 million budget. And so to the point where they would leave it alone, but then eventually they got second thoughts, and then they still made a different finale in 2006. And a better finale too. Alright, so here are the bad qualities in the story of Rocky V. So yeah. Now, yeah, I know, this is a movie, it's not supposed to be real, it's not, obviously, movies are supposed to be fake, but when the thing is that somehow Rocky loses all his fortune from his moron accountant, gets lost in the stock markets. Rocky should be a high-profile celebrity by this point after Rocky IV. So, those kind of celebrities don't go permanently broke by losing their money if the money they got was from something they did. In Rocky's case, if you were rising from nothing to be his champion fighter, and the people that lose their money go back to his poverty are people, those kind of people are lottery winners, where their money was their fame, No connections, they lose their money, they have no assets. Or assets. Celebrities have connection to open doors in the business world, so... And Rocky is a high-profile celebrity. After that fight with Drago, Rocky would make like 5 figures or more after the fight with Drago. He would still get stuff like a book deal or HBO shows or ABC segments and hire him as a commentator. Like, be able to promote more products. Maybe obviously retire from boxing, but he'd probably still be able to do those. If he would lose his money, he'd still be hired for that stuff, because he should already be high profile after beating Drago in Russia. It's like, that was the premise of Rocky 3. You know, Rocky 3 showed him doing all that stuff. And to the point where he got caught up in fame, he forgot he was a fighter. So why is that not an option for Rocky 5? That's so weird. It makes no sense. Now, the idea of Rocky training a fighter to take his place would not seem much of a bad idea for a finale. What was intended at the time. And he takes a trainer position in this one, but instead of taking on an actually boxer-looking dude, he takes some random punk or random loser named Tommy Gunn and trains him in art of boxing, or how to allow himself to be hit time and again in the head and face. Like, this film is so predictable from the start. This loser is going to get bought out by another trainer. Rocky will have to fight this loser in the end. And Rocky's going to win. And the movie's going to have and it's just going to end the same way. Well, the difference is the final fight doesn't take place in a ring. It takes place in the middle of the streets. Like, all the other Rocky final fights, and that includes the Creed films, all of them take place in a ring. They don't fight in a fucking street. And the fight is shitty too. Like, Rocky V misses the mark so bad. Like, there's too many exaggerations in Rocky's personality, and too far beyond belief that literally Rocky would undergo such extreme stuff, like where his fortunes rise and fall. Now, how do we start off? So, when the movie starts off, the movie starts off actually promising. We actually do see the aftermath of Rocky IV. And you know what? I wish this whole first half could have just been edited to make that the end of Rocky IV, Up until he says goodnight to his kid, that is. Just that stuff. Just take that, take this first bit I'm about to describe. Put it in the theatrical version of Rocky IV. Make out a fan cut. Make this what I'm talking about, the actual end to Rocky 4. And then he shuts the bedroom door, and then freeze frame on bedroom door, credits. That would be a more full ending to Rocky 4. So here we go. So right after he beat Drago in Moscow, Rocky finds himself experiencing physical trauma from the fight, where he remembers what Mickey had told him back in the earlier films. And this is another well-acted moment right here where he experiences the trauma that Mickey was feeling from his fights, and they return right there. So yeah, it's off to a promising start. I can't, like, I watched this, I couldn't wait to see where it was hopefully gonna maybe go. Maybe experiencing, like, Rocky actually going through some trauma from his fight. That another plot point that could have worked. So he returns with Adrian, his brother-in-law Paulie, and trainer Tony Evers to the United States, and Rocky's son, who, despite this being set after Rocky 4, is somehow now a fucking teenager, despite the fact he should still be the same age as he was in Rocky 4, if this is set after the 4 film. So why the hell is he a teenager and all this, just grow puberty magically in seconds, and just like that be a teenager, then seconds? What, did he grow puberty watching the fight on TV? We never know. But they recasted the kid, apparently. So it's a press conference where boxing hero George Washington Duke tries to goad Rocky into fighting his boxer Union Kane, this top-rated challenger, but Rocky declines that. And then they return home, where they find this new map, where they're at this new map, return home to their mansion, and Rocky then pretty much is in his son's bedroom, says goodnight to him, and then when he leaves the bedroom, then you could, if there was a fan cut of the theatrical version of Rocky 4 where that was the ending, then that'd be the more full ending to Rocky 4. And then maybe for a while before Rocky Balboa, then you could probably call Rocky 4 the finale at the time. Before Rocky Balboa, well, they'll still let Rocky Balboa be made. Just make this whole bit the ending of Rocky 4. That would be a lot better. That would actually be a great ending to Rocky 4. It would be, I would like that better. I wish that fan cut did exist. And that's where most of the good ends. Because this is where the film goes downhill. Where Rocky and Adrian discover from Paulie that they're now bankrupt all of a sudden because Paulie somehow was stupid enough to sign a power of attorney over to Rocky's accountant and should have realized this was clearly a scam. But no, apparently he easily falls for it. And this accountant embezzled all of his money to real estate deals and neglected to pay Rocky's taxes over the previous 6 years. So he can't secure a merchandising deal because of his history as a mafia person, despite the fact that he somehow got merchandising from all those other years in Rocky 3, somehow he was able to do commercials, somehow he was able to be on the Muppet Show. All of a sudden, and now suddenly he can't get merchandising now, despite the fact he was able to do all that stuff in Rocky 3. His mansion gets mortgaged by $400,000. His attorney tells Rocky it's fixable with a few more fights, and he accepts the fight with Kane, but Adrian urges him to see a doctor first, and he's diagnosed with Kevin septicemia. Like, here's the thing. Barely anybody in this movie is likable. That's really saying something. Like, Rocky's son in this movie, Rocky's son is such a fucking brat in this one. Unlike the great kid he was in Rocky 3 and the great kid he was in Rocky 4, they make him so irritating in this fucking film. Right there, like he's not rootable. Also, Tommy Gunn, they don't give a shit about him. He's just some loser off the street that is just gonna basically be evil in the end. Rocky doesn't really get much of an arc. Now, the idea of him training a fighter actually is a great idea for a movie. But the difference is, if you're going to do that, still give him a story arc, Still have him dealing with the physical trauma that he endured at the beginning of the film. Or still have him trying to deal with his diagnosis. And all that stuff. You could have still given him an arc even if he's not in the ring. He could have had a great idea right there, but the studios were so difficult with Stallone's screenplay that they basically decided to just make their own, basically. It's reject the one that he clearly planned that actually would have been actually decently good and actually would have been better. No build-up or sense or stakes on the entire film, and it feels like a waste of time. And what happened to the soundtrack, too? The soundtrack also sucks. The soundtrack in 4 and 3 were excellent. Even the soundtracks in 1 and 2 were excellent. Here, you just get a bunch of shitty hip-hop songs that are not catchy, they're cringy to listen to, they're not memorable, and you get these flashy montages of all the other movies throughout quite a few scenes. Like in the final fight, you get unnecessary zoom-ins on the character of Mickey during the first 3 movies, to the point where it's just flashy and you can't tell what final fight is going on. And that's the thing, all the cast performances in this movie, they sound tired. Like, you could tell the cast was getting bored of these movies. And so they pretty much just stopped caring about all the fun, corny moments from the other films. The letdown shit final fight, middle of the dirty streets, and the lamest final fight as well. Like this thing, Rocky was a character who starts off with humble beginnings. He was a loan shark with the mafia, who started off with humble beginnings, and when he eventually got called to fight Apollo Creed, he worked his way up to superstardom throughout the rest of the movies. He kept getting better shape, increased his wealth, became a world champ, and suddenly, this film decides, oh, apparently no, accountant was a scam artist and loses all his money, and we're set Rocky to square one. Whatever. It doesn't work. So, after Rocky got diagnosed, he retires from boxing reluctantly. So his house gets sold, his belongings get sold, so he can pay the debt. And the Balboas have to move back to their old working class neighborhood in Philadelphia. And there was one other scene I did like here, where this is one of the few scenes in the movie where it actually feels like a Rocky film, where Rocky visits Mighty Mick's gym that had been falling to disrepair since it closed down after his death. And when he sees a flashback of himself and Mickey right there, which I will admit, that's one of the only scenes in the movie I like. That's one of the scenes where you can tell the writing from the other films is still present. Rocky decides to get inspiration to become a trainer himself, and he reopens Mickey's gym. So, you start, okay, maybe you start off better here. You think the film will finally get better again? No, it doesn't. Right there. Sadly, it doesn't. And I wish it did, because you actually still have a good concept that him reopening a gym was a great idea for retirement. Then Paulie and Rocky, after they drop their son off at school, they meet our young loser fighter named Tommy Gunn, who is unmemorable as a character. And they train him, and then Tommy rises to become a top contender with Rocky's management, but he's distracted with Tommy's training, and Rocky starts neglecting his son, who gets bullied at school. And then eventually, his son decides to start a fight with the bullies, and he falls in with the wrong crowd, becomes withdrawn from his family, and he becomes such a brat. An annoying brat that, honestly, you don't care gets punched. The whole film, this kid was so annoying. Like, what the hell happened to this kid? Because that's the thing, apparently, he somehow grew puberty within seconds after Rocky 4. They couldn't even try to hide that. And so Union Kane goes to the vacant world heavyweight champ title and wants to do business with Rocky. So Duke then showers Tommy with all these luxuries and promises. The only path to a shot at the title is himself. And though Rocky tries to warn him that dealing with Duke will not end well, but Tommy starts to ban him. Adrian tries to comfort Rocky, but then he complains that training Tommy renewed his sense of purpose. But then she tells Rocky that Tommy never had his heart at all. And Rocky then starts to finally realize his family's top priority, especially after his son, basically Robert, acted all bratty during Christmas and then stormed downstairs and had an argument with him downstairs. And then he goes hanging out with the wrong friends. But then after that little bit there, Rocky realizes his family's top priority, and he apologizes to Adrian, and then he apologizes to Robert. Despite the fact, though, this should not be a thing. Robert should be the one apologizing for being such a brat in the first place. So it should be the other way around. Rocky should not really be the one apologizing to Robert. If that was the case, then Robert should have apologized to him too. Both of them should have apologized to each other. It should not just be Rocky apologizing. Like Rocky 5 is in like ways attempt to try to complete the circle from rags to riches and back again, like Rocky 2. They don't try to hide that, but it's a clumsy attempt to try to breathe the last bit of life into a franchise that started so phenomenally with Rocky 1, continued with Rocky 2, a slight step downish, but still great with Rocky 3, still great with the underrated Rocky 4, and then suddenly goes all downhill with this one movie before it went back to grace again with Rocky Balboa. Like the thing is like, you clearly had the idea, and bringing John G. Avildsen back actually didn't seem like that bad of an idea. Though, to be fair, and then you do also remember this guy did direct the Karate Kid films, but he also was involved in the sequels. And sadly, the damage like that third one did to that franchise applies to this too. Stallone's still the writer, but not the boxing choreographer. Like, that's the thing. He was the choreographer for the boxing, and he made the boxing epic in those films. There's not even much boxing in this movie either. Like, this film is so boring, and when the boxing happens, it's barely all that enjoyable. Most of the film, he's either training at the gym, there's like one boxing fight near the end of the film with Tommy, and it like lasts way too quick. And then the actual fight is literally in the streets. There's a shot of the prodigious rise to fame, but Rocky's retired though since he's not in the ring. And fight between him and the prodigy is not a boxing match. It's basically a street fight that would have clearly landed both of them in jail for assault. And no, this film was not intended to be horrible from the start. This film was clearly about to be off to a great start. It completes the life cycle of a boxer, a small-time boxer, champion, the defending title, or has been retiring to be a trainer. It shows the potential appearance of a new champion that could take his place, and a new Rocky that could take his place, and if fire like the trainer ex-champion coaches, the torch would be passed here. And covering the long-term effects of boxing, all that stuff here, like the whole beginning potential, Rocky dealing with PSD in his fights, that barely gets explored ever again. That's like the beginning scene where you started trembling from the physical trauma. You could have explored that plot point. Why did you just explore that plot point? That could have been a great plot point for Rocky in his fifth and at the time final outing. And so our only boxing fight is with Tommy, and Tommy is able to fight and defeat Kane for the heavyweight title with the first knockout, but the audience boos him because he abandoned Rocky for the stupid heavyweight title, and crediting success only to Duke, and they vilify Tommy as a paper champion because he didn't win the title for Balboa. And pretty much so, Duke convinces Tommy that he has to secure a fight with Rocky to refute such a notion. And so, Duke and Tommy go up to this bar with a TV crew, despite the fact that I don't think a TV crew would go with you guys to try to film an actual street fight. And they goad Rocky to accepting a title fight in the middle of the street. Rocky, though, says no to that idea and tries to reason with Tommy, but Tommy calls him weak. He's like, "No, I'm not a robot, Rocky. I'm not a robot." And so Paulie decides to stand for Rocky, and then when Tommy punches Paulie, Rocky challenges Tommy out in the middle of street fight like Street Fighter, and throughout this whole fight sucks. This whole fight Most of the fights either jumpy or zoom, flashback, zoom in shots of Mickey from the other films, zoom in shots of all the other movies throughout this entire fight, so you don't know what the hell's going on. This whole entire fight. Like, Tommy Gunn is not even an interesting villain. It's like Clubber Lang was better. Ivan Drago was better. Tommy Gunn, you don't give a shit about Tommy Gunn. I don't give a shit if he tries to take the championship title from Rocky. I don't give a shit if he's booed and called a robot. Or I don't give a shit if he tries to go join Duke. Or try to give a shit if he wants to fight Rocky in the streets. Okay, I don't give a shit about that. Like, the ones who grabbed the audience's attention, Apollo Creed was more of a rival, really. Not really a bad... Apollo Creed was never a bad guy. He was just more of a boxing champion that was fighting for the sport of it. And wanted to prove hecklers wrong. In Rocky 2, they grabbed the audience's attention because, you know why? They were well written, and Clubber Lang was also very entertaining. Yeah, over the top, but also an entertaining love-to-hate antagonist. Ivan Drago was an intimidating killing machine that you actually enjoyed on screen. It was memorable, despite that film's Rocky IV's shorter runtime than this. That's the thing. Another thing is the runtime. Like, Rocky wanted 2 hours, and they're better written. Because they were actually boxing stuff in the films. Rocky V is 2 hours, and almost nothing goes on. Like, those foes grab audience's attention because and are focused on them as much as Rocky is, and they were a threat to Rocky's success, what Clubber Lang and Ivan Drago were, really. Tommy Gunn, there's not much threat about this guy. He's what the press basically says. He is Rocky's robot. And Rocky taught him a chance to stand, and basically, yeah, Rocky's brain damaged, but he taught the kid most of what he would know. And then he basically throws that all away and betrays him. Because he's such an entitled prick that thinks he can take the championship for himself. And you refer back to the Old Chapel or Streets of Philadelphia, you know, Mickey infamous run up the steps into the streets. You could tell the series was out of ideas by this point, and it had no more enthusiasm by this point. Rocky IV was great because it did something fresh and new, something we hadn't seen before. Apollo and Drago, an exciting main character of the film, taking a stage to Rocky for a short little while. Like aside with Rocky we had seen before, not paying much attention to Adrian. Sure, he could have did without our words, like right there. And of course, Dolph Lundgren was actually Dolph Lundgren was a perfect choice for Drago and portrayed Drago well. They keep making the mistake of getting a new kid to play Robert. And that's the thing, though. The thing is, Robert in Rocky IV still looked like the same young kid he was in Rocky III. But here suddenly, despite this being said seconds after, he grew puberty in like seconds. Right there, in like either weeks or days. He grew puberty in days and is suddenly now a teenager. For some weird reason. If that's the case, like, why didn't you just set this 5 years after? After Rocky IV, because it comes out 5 years after Rocky IV. Like, and yeah, like, now it's nice to see Stallone as son act in the same film, but it just did not fit with the story. And the writing was also off. Like, he suddenly forgets about his friend's death, like, happened like weeks after this. And instead of focusing on Rocky dealing with the guilt of letting his friend die, they focus on basically mourning over Mickey's death. Despite the fact he already mourned his death in the third film, like, that's the thing. He spent time mourning Mickey's death in Rocky III because that was the point of his character arc. You know, he kind of blamed himself for Mickey's death. And Mickey was like the first father figure he really had. Like, that was kind of part of his character arc in Rocky III, you know? He kind of blamed himself for Mickey's death, and he didn't really have much fighting energy in him. And then Adrian talked him out of it, and he basically got his confidence back. You know, and he pretty much fought Clubber Lang and avenged Mickey's death. Because Corleone technically did cause Mickey's death when he pushed him and caused him a heart attack. That's the thing. It seemed like Rocky 4, it seemed like he was now at peace with that, but then Apollo Creed, then Sally got killed. And he's trying, instead of trying to focus on, maybe still feeling emotional, still feeling the loss of Apollo Creed, they don't. Right there. They don't. They just repeat Rocky 3 again with that bit right there. So now we get on with the finale. So Tommy gets initially knocked to the street ground by Rocky's flurry of punches. Then Tommy gets up and attacks Rocky from behind, punches him to the ground. He gets nightmares, random, blurry, stupid shots, random out of nowhere shots of Drago that makes it feel like the editing team were on drugs or something. And a vision of Mickey urges him to get up and continue the fight, and that's when you get all the random close-up shots. Robert and Adrian see the brawl being televised, and they go to the back alley to cheer for Rocky. And Robert, Polly, Adrian, neighborhood crowd cheering him on, despite the fact that a street fight is actually kind of I think that would be an illegal place to have a street fight on. Rocky utilizes the street fighting skills and defeats Tommy in the middle of the street. And even though wouldn't Rocky be arrested as well for a street fight? Only Tommy gets arrested. Though. Because anybody could get arrested for having a fight in the middle of the street. Right there, this wasn't even a boxing fight. This was a fight literally in a public area. And Duke threatens to sue Rocky if he touches him. And Rocky hesitates at the idea, but decides that does not care about being sued, and basically just punches him into the air. It sends him flying in the air from a light punch that just sends Duke literally flying all the way into the air onto the hood of a car. Yeah, somehow a small punch sends him flying up in the air and flies on the hood of a car. And he's like, sue me for what? Because, Duke pretty much has nothing left now, and obviously it would not work. And that's months later, Rocky and Robert climb up the Rocky steps, and they visit his statue. And they're going to go inside and explore the Museum of Art. Rocky gives his son Marciano's cufflink, which Mickey gifted to Rocky years earlier. And that's how Rocky 5 ends. You do get an end credits montage of shots from the other films, because this was intended to be the last one at the time. And that didn't last because they made this 15 years later. And you know what? Maybe, they should make... You want to know what I think they should do? They should make a fan cut of Rocky Balboa, where after he says, Adrian, we did it. Take the credits... Maybe take the credits, of Rocky Balboa, make a fan cut where the scenes from the other movies, the little black and white pictures of scenes from the other movies, that played in this at the end credits. Well, take that bit and put that in the end credits of Rocky Balboa. Because, I think, now, I don't really... As much as I like Rocky Balboa, I don't think the montage of actual real people running up the Rocky stairs was too much finality, really. I feel I kind of wish the end credit. I wish someone would make a fan cut of the end credits of Rocky Balboa, where the shots you see in the credits are the black and white pictures you saw at the end of this movie. That would be better. And that way, then you could call Rocky Balboa Rocky 5. Because Rocky Balboa was more finality than this even was. Now, yeah, Rocky didn't win the fight, Rocky Balboa, but that didn't matter to him. It didn't matter. He didn't care if he won the fight or not. He didn't care if he lost. He still got cheered anyway. He didn't care about the outcome of the fight at all. And he came at peace with losing Adrian. That was the point of Rocky Balboa's ending. Alright, so now do I have any good qualities with Rocky 5? Well, yeah, I do have some good qualities with Rocky 5. Because it's not like something like Jaws of Revenge, because it does have some good stuff. You know, the first half is good. You know, there are some things like trying to explore Rocky's physical trauma that went nowhere that actually could have worked. Rocky being a trainer actually is an actually solid idea for a finale, having him train a new fighter. That would actually be not a bad idea for a finale right there. Morrison does give a fine performance. The hip-hop soundtrack... no, that's a bad quality. Not the hip-hop soundtrack. But I'd say the first bit is good. Some themes like the PTSD, physical trauma bit, the flashback with Mickey was well done. I'd say Stallone wasn't too bad. Stallone still tried his best with the material he was given. To be fair, it was more the studio's fault with how this turned out because he clearly had a different screenplay plan, but MGM said no to it, and they basically made their own. So other than those, so Rocky 5, yeah, it's skippable. In fact, like, it's not canon, so there's no point really watching it anyway. It's not good excuse of a finale either way. So in the end, this is definitely the one Rocky movie you don't need to waste your time on. Anyways, that's it for my review of Rocky 5. If you want to rank Rocky 5, here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, if you want a good send-off for Rocky, just skip this entry altogether. Just go straight to Rocky Balboa after Rocky 4, because this is hardly much of a finale for this character at all. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rank Rocky 5, I'm going to give Rocky 5 a 4 out of 10. Alright, there we go, guys. Well, time for you to go buried back in the pile far away from the other Rocky films where you belong. And speaking of Rocky Balboa that I mentioned, our literally next scene, our next review in the Rocky series is obviously going to be Rocky Balboa. Yeah, the next review. But, yeah. So, we'll go visit the real Rocky 5 next. The one that really matters. Now, I want to know in the comments down below. I'm going to end this now. I want to know in the comments down below what you guys think about Rocky 5. Whether you don't like this film as much as I do, or whether you think it's not that bad. And until then, guys, that will be it for this review or rantish. Thank you all for watching. If you like this, want to see more, don't forget to subscribe to Don G. Corleone.